Hey guys, welcome to week 1, video 2 of doing Jack London's The Call of the Wild. This week we're going to do some more reading. We're going to look a little bit more at the character of Buck as he develops. We're going to expose a couple of underlying themes and maybe some larger themes that are at play in the novel, and maybe break down some of the symbolism that's being used early on. In these first couple of videos, especially because we're not in our normal classroom setting where I can just have a conversation back and forth with all of you and we can feed off of each other's ideas through a critical dialogue. Instead, I'm just talking to a camera and I don't get your ideas as well. I'm just going to be reading through and stopping to share some of my ideas. If I miss something, maybe a really interesting theme that you noticed, or a symbol that pops out at you, or maybe just something important in the book, you should write it down. Take a note, and then you can join my Zoom calls anytime from 8:30 to 9 a.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Not this coming Friday. You'll see this video on Thursday, so not tomorrow, rather on normal Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays going forward from 8:30 to 9 a.m. You can come join that Zoom call and we can talk about what we've learned in the book. We can talk about some of the characters. And again, if you notice anything that I didn't mention, feel free to please bring it up then. And if you can't make the Zoom call, you can always email me some of your ideas. This is a really interesting piece of literature, and we're going to be exposing a lot of different fun and really relevant themes. So I want you guys to share if you do think of anything. At the end of the video, I'm going to have one more assignment for you. Since we don't have school this Friday, because of Good Friday, you'll have all day Thursday, all day Friday, all day Saturday, and all day Sunday to work on the assignment. And you'll see that I'm actually going to do it's an assignment with the availability to make it just a step harder or put a step more work in for those of you who are willing to do that or have the time on your hands. Anyway, without further ado, let's get reading back into Jack London's The Call of the Wild. Now, when we left off, our friend Buck had recently been taken by Manuel and captured from his hometown on Judge Miller's farm, or Judge Miller's estate. Buck was kind of the law, the king of the land there. He got to do whatever he wanted. He's a big dog. His father is a Saint Bernard. He's joyful. A lot of people are friends with him. And so he typically would run around and play with like the judge's sons and walk the judge's daughters. We think of Buck already as this natural leader and this really friendly figure. Now we're going to see some more development of Buck. So last we saw, I would be on page 15 in this copy of the book. If you're reading on Project Gutenberg, then you can feel free to click the link in the description of this video, which will bring you to that. And you can hit the control key and hit F. So control F. That brings up the find toolbar. So go ahead and click control F. And then once you do, you can type in the words, "He knew nothing when the train was flagged and the 2 men threw him into the baggage car." As you're typing those in, it should bring you to a really specific part of that page with the book on it. And you'll see that sentence. Once you see that sentence, which is followed by a new paragraph saying, "The next he knew," then you're caught up with where I'm at, okay? And we can do that every time. You can use that control F, which is the find feature, in order to get your place back to where I'm at. Anyway, Buck was thrown into a baggage car and on a train, and now we're going to see what becomes of him. The next he knew, he was dimly aware that his tongue was hurting, and that he was being jolted along in some kind of a conveyance. The hoarse shriek of a locomotive whistling a crossing told him where he was. He had traveled too often with the judge not to know the sensation of riding in a baggage car. He opened his eyes, and into them came the unbridled anger of a kidnapped king. It's an interesting word choice there. Kidnapped king, right? So again, the author using specific words to give us a characterization of who Buck is. The man sprang for his throat, but Buck was too quick for him. His jaws closed on the hand, nor did they relax till the senses were choked out of him once more. "Yep, has the fits," the man said, hiding his mangled hand from the baggageman who had been attracted by the sound of a struggle. "I'm taking him up for the boss to Frisco. A crack dog doctor there thinks he can cure him." So the guy lied, right? He's worried that he's going to get in trouble for stealing this dog, so he's pretending that the dog is sick. Concerning that night's ride, the man spoke most eloquently for himself in a little shed back of the saloon at the San Francisco waterfront. "All I get is 50 for it," he grumbled, "and I wouldn't do it for over 1,000, cold cash." His hand was wrapped in a bloody handkerchief, and the right trouser leg was ripped from knee to ankle. "How much did that other mug get?" the saloon keeper demanded. "100, was the reply. "Wouldn't take a so less, so help me." "That makes 150, said the saloon keeper, calculated. "And he's worth it, or I'm a squarehead." The kidnapper undid the bloody wrappings and looked at the lacerated hand. "If I don't get the hydrophobia, it'll be because you was born to hang," laughed the saloon keeper. "Here, lend me your hand before you pull your freight," he added. Dazed, suffering intolerable pain from the throat and tongue, with the life half throttled out of him, Buck attempted to face his tormentors. But he was thrown down and choked repeatedly, till they succeeded in filing the heavy brass collar from off his neck. Then the rope was removed, and he was flung into a cage-like crate. There he lay for the remainder of the weary night, nursing his wrath and wounded pride. He could not understand what it all meant. What did they want with him, these strange men? Why were they keeping him pent up in this narrow crate? He did not know why, but he felt oppressed by the vague sense of impending calamity. Several times during the night he sprang to his feet when the shed door rattled open, expecting to see the judge, or the boys at least. But each time it was the bulging face of the saloon keeper that peered in at him by the sickly light of a tallow candle. And each time the joyful bark that trembled in Buck's throat was twisted into a savage growl. This is an interesting place for us to stop and take another look at the growth of Buck as a character, or at least our understanding of Buck as a character. It's easy enough to see him as just a static archetype. So what I mean by that is you have characters who are static. We've covered this in class. Characters who are static, meaning they don't really change much, and characters who are dynamic, so they change a lot throughout a story. Excuse me. A good example of a static character would be Piggy from Lord of the Flies, or Boxer from Animal Farm. Piggy and Boxer were both very similar characters at the end of the story as they were in the beginning. You know, Boxer was always hardworking and honest. Piggy, and Boxer was also loyal. Piggy was always picked on and really intelligent and never listened to. This was the same character essentially from beginning to end. A dynamic character would be somebody in Lord of the Flies like Jack, who started out as this little rough around the edges kid with a chip on his shoulder, but actually evolved through time into a complete savage. He changed immeasurably from the beginning to the end. And then in Animal Farm, you would have someone like Napoleon. In the beginning of the story, Napoleon was kind of this, I don't know, he was this quiet, big bore, and by the end of the story, he was so corrupt and mad and crazy and such a dictator that he almost looked like a human to the other animals. So there too, you see this huge character arc, this very dynamic change. In this story, I think we're being revealed, or Buck is being revealed to us as a dynamic character. And what I mean by that is that he's not just this dog who is only one way and then doesn't change as things go on, even moment by moment, let alone as we get throughout the entire story. Already we've been exposed to the natural leader side of Buck, and now we're also seeing that Buck has some intelligence. I would say so because he doesn't just dislike the saloon keeper or these other men for no reason. It's not all instinct, like we would assume, well, dogs have instincts. It's not like that. What actually seems to be happening is that Buck is taking the events that are happening to him, so getting attacked or choked out or sold from place to place or what have you. He's taking these events and recognizing the people who are part of those events and deciding to dislike them. And this isn't necessarily instinct. I mean, this is learned intelligent behavior. So here we see Buck being an intelligent person, an intelligent dog, and an intelligent character. And this, I think, is part of his arc. He's not just this natural charismatic leader, he's also got some intelligence to him. And we're going to see how that helps him develop throughout the book. Let's continue. The saloon keeper let him alone, and in the morning 4 men entered and picked up the crate. More tormentors, Buck decided, for they were evil-looking creatures, ragged and unkempt, and he stormed and raged at them through the bars. They only laughed and poked sticks at him, which he promptly assailed with his teeth till he realized that was what they had wanted. Whereupon he lay down sullenly and allowed the crate to be lifted into a wagon. Then he, and the crate in which he was imprisoned, began a passage through many hands. Clerks in the express office took charge of him. He was carted about in another wagon. A truck carried him, with an assortment of boxes and parcels upon a ferry steamer. He was trucked off the steamer into a great railway depot, and finally he was deposited in an express car. For 2 days and nights, this express car was dragged along at the tail of shrieking locomotives. 1 second, there's some noise coming from outside the house. Okay, I shut the window, that should be better. Okay. He was trucked off the steamer into a great railway depot, and finally he was deposited in an express car. For 2 days and nights, this express car was dragged along at the tail of shrieking locomotives, and for 2 days and nights, Buck neither ate nor drank. In his anger, he had met the first advances of the express messengers with growls, and they had retaliated by teasing him. When he flung himself against the bars, quivering and frothing, they laughed at him and taunted him. They growled and barked like detestable dogs, mewed and flapped their arms and crowed. It was all very silly, he knew, but therefore the more outrage to his dignity, and his anger waxed and waxed. Just a little insight on the word waxed. It doesn't mean like candle wax or something like that. I don't know if any of you have ever heard the phrase, the moon waxes and wanes. In this case, it's sort of like that. When the moon waxes, that means that it's growing. And when it wanes, that means it's getting smaller. So here, Buck's anger waxed and waxed. So that would mean that it grows and grows, right? Okay. He did not mind the hunger so much, but the lack of water caused him severe suffering and fanned his wrath to a fever pitch. For that matter, high-strung and finely sensitive, the ill treatment had flung him into a fever, which was fed by the inflammation of his parched and swollen throat and tongue. He was glad for one thing. The rope was off his neck. That had given them an unfair advantage. But now that it was off, he would show them. They would never get another rope around his neck. Upon that, he was resolved. We're going to pause there, actually. That's where we're going to stop for the day. That's the first symbol that I really want to look closely at. This idea of a rope being around Buck's neck can be broken down into something a little more universal. So the first thing we probably think of with a rope around a neck would be slavery or some sort of captivity. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. Slavery or captivity, maybe being imprisoned. And that's an easy enough idea to see the connection between. If we break Buck down from a dog to simply being just a character, just an entity, and we break the rope down from being a rope to simply being something that holds you back, or something that allows you to be restrained, specifically allowing others to restrain you, then we get to see a more universal theme here. Let's say, for example, that your best friend buys you the new Xbox or something like that, right? And they spend $1,000 on the Xbox and accessories and some different video games for it and all of that. Now you owe them $1,000. It wasn't a gift, they just sort of fronted you the money. You don't make $1,000 very quickly, it's kind of a lot. And so it takes you a while to pay it back. As that time goes on, you really feel like there's sort of a leash around your neck. Like you can't spend money on other things, like a Frosty from Wendy's, or some new pants from your favorite store, or something like that. Maybe some like DLC in Minecraft, I don't know. You can't spend your money on that stuff because you owe your friend. And when you finally pay it off, you say, I will never owe money to somebody like that again. That is the exact same situation that Buck experiences with the leash around his neck. This idea where you're being held captive by a situation or by people in a place where you don't want to be. So in its very core essence, we can think of the rope around Buck's neck as maybe a restriction of freedom. And in a beautiful way, we can think about Buck's decision to never allow the rope go around his neck again as a declaration of freedom. And that's really admirable. Buck decides, I'm never gonna let myself not be free again. And I think not only are we tapping into an important symbol in the beginning of the book, but we can use that symbol to slowly develop a really important theme, which is the theme of freedom. What constitutes the rope around our neck? Is it simply our captors holding us in a crate and choking us when we get angry, like Buck? Or is it something larger? Is Buck maybe a captive to something bigger than he realizes? This is a theme and an idea we're going to be engaging with sort of throughout the novel. And I think it's especially relevant to us right now as we're kind of stuck inside of our houses and sometimes, really wish we could go out and go do things. So hopefully we can live vicariously through the journey of Buck, and when the time comes for us to go back out into the world and enjoy life again outside, then maybe we can take some of the lessons and apply them. So we're going to stop there for now. We looked at a little more of Buck's character, how he's developing as a dynamic character. We looked a little bit at the theme of freedom, and I think we dove pretty deeply into the rope as a symbol. So what I want to do for the assignment this week is this. Since you have so many days to complete it, I want you to find one piece in the book so far, one sentence, one symbol, maybe one word that's being used on purpose, one idea, one character, and in as many sentences or as few sentences as you want, I'd like for you to analyze that thing. So this is a pretty vague open assignment, but it gives you the opportunity to find something that you find interesting and critical about the book. You can use any kind of plot, tone or mood, characterization, conflict, theme, point of view, setting. You can engage with all those elements of literature, as well as target audience, rhetorical appeals like ethos, pathos, logos, diction, syntax. These are all things that throughout the year we've covered in class, and I want you to pick one to engage with and tell me something that you find interesting about this book. For those of you who are looking for a little more challenging of an assignment, or something that will be a little more refined, I'd like for you to write 2 paragraphs describing how the setting contributes to Buck's characterization. So imagine for yourself that the setting is different. Rather than being in the 1800s, imagine that you're in the year 2552, right? 2552, way in the future. Would the setting be different? Would Buck's experience be different? Would Buck as a dog be different? Would the setting of his travel be different from a train? There are things like that that you can look at, and then I want you to draw from those an idea of how the character of Buck would be different because of the setting, okay? So you can really get imaginative with that, but I want you to make relevant claims. So don't just run off into sort of a fun field of writing about whatever you'd like. I want you to keep it somewhat grounded to the story and how it actually ties in a little bit into what we've read. So nothing about how in 2552 Buck would actually get abducted by reptilian aliens who turn him into a reptilian alien, and then he would come to Earth and turn into Godzilla. That wouldn't really fit. But something about the future and how maybe he wouldn't be on a train or would be doing something else might be good for that assignment. Anyway, as time goes on, we're going to be doing more reading. I just want to expose this to shorter videos in the beginning. I'm going to wrap it up now. Remember to come to my Zoom office hours in the mornings on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8:30 to 9 so that we can discuss some of the different things that are going on in the book and some of your homework assignments. If you can't make it to the Zoom calls, please email me your homework, and please try and make it to the Zoom calls because I love seeing every one of you guys. Okay, that's it. Have a wonderful weekend. See you guys soon.